You've seen them. The CEOs who own the stage with just a few words. The thought leaders who speak for 15 minutes and leave an audience completely transformed. The 1% elite. Those who know how to communicate with power, precision, and presence. Here's the truth. They're not born that way. They use tools. They follow principles. And those principles can be learned. In talk like TED, Carmine Gallo goes behind the scenes of the world's most powerful presentations. The ones that go viral, the ones that raise millions, the ones that change lives. What he discovered is that the best speakers in the world aren't simply sharing ideas. They're building emotional resonance. They're crafting moments of connection. They're designing experiences that linger in the minds of their audience long after the applause fades. This book isn't about public speaking in the traditional sense. It's about influence. It's about clarity. It's about learning how to speak in a way that inspires confidence, communicates authority, and most of all, sparks action. And that's what this video is going to give you. We're going to explore the core elements, the habits, the psychology, the structure that separate forgettable communication from unforgettable persuasion. The techniques used by TED legends, industry leaders, and world-class thinkers. Not tricks, not gimmicks, but principles that elevate your presence. On stage, in a meeting, in front of a camera, or across the table from someone who needs to believe in your vision. By the end of this video, you won't just know how to sound smarter. You'll understand how to speak with purpose, with clarity, and with power. Because speaking like the 1% has nothing to do with status. It has everything to do with intention. Let's begin. Part 1. Unleash the master within. Every truly great talk begins before the first word is spoken. Not in the script, not in the slides, but in the speaker's conviction. And that's where Carmine Gallo starts, with the inner fire. Because no one can inspire others unless they are first inspired themselves. To unleash the master within means to speak from a place of deep personal connection. It's about knowing why your message matters, not in theory, but in your bones. The best TED speakers aren't just delivering facts. They're sharing what they believe, what they've lived, what they can't not say. That internal alignment between belief, purpose, and message is what makes the difference between a polished talk and a powerful one. Audiences know when a speaker is emotionally invested. They feel it. You can see it in the energy, in the eyes, in the way the speaker moves and breathes. Passion is contagious, and it gives language its weight. Without it, even the most well-structured talk will feel flat. But when it's there, the audience leans in, not because they have to, but because they want to know what's burning inside the speaker. That kind of authenticity doesn't come from performance. It comes from clarity. Knowing what drives you. Knowing what experience shaped your insights. Knowing what truth you've paid a price to learn, and now feel called to share. The best communicators don't try to sound impressive. They try to serve. They speak because they believe their message might change something, for someone, somewhere. And that belief gives them the kind of presence that no technique can fake. Before you think about structure, delivery, or slides, you need to ask yourself, what am I deeply convinced of? What lights me up? What do I want people to walk away with? Not just knowing, but feeling. That's where great talks begin. Not with a catchy opening. Not with data. But with fire. With purpose. With a message that comes from the most honest part of who you are. When you speak from that place, you stop trying to impress. You start trying to connect. And that's what people remember. Part 2. Master the art of storytelling. There's a reason the world's best speakers tell stories. Not because it's trendy. Not because it fills time. But because story is how humans are wired to understand the world. Carmine Gallo discovered something profound while studying the most successful TED Talks. The most remembered messages weren't just logical. They were emotional. And the emotion came from stories. Personal, vivid, honest, human stories. A good story bypasses resistance. It slips past the part of the brain that analyzes and filters and lands directly in the emotional center. That's where influence begins. Not in data, but in feeling. And stories are the fastest path to feeling. But the power of story goes beyond entertainment. When a speaker shares a moment of vulnerability, or describes a struggle they've lived through, they invite the audience into something deeper. They create trust. They show, rather than tell, why their idea matters. And in that moment, connection happens, not through credentials, but through shared experience. This is what separates forgettable talks from unforgettable ones. Facts inform, but stories transform. They give meaning to numbers. They create context for insight. They let the audience feel what the speaker felt, and when that happens, the message sticks. Gallo shows that the best TED speakers tell stories in all shapes. A challenge overcome, a moment of failure that became a lesson, a breakthrough that changed everything. These stories don't have to be dramatic. What matters is that they are real, lived, felt. They aren't added to the message, they are the message. And there's something else. When you tell a story, you shift the room. People stop evaluating and start imagining. Their walls come down. Their minds open. Because now, they're not being told what to think, they're being invited into a journey. If you want to speak like the elite, you have to understand that storytelling is not optional. It's the bridge between what you know and what others will remember. It's how you take an idea that lives inside you and make it matter to someone else. So before you structure your talk around points, statistics, or slides, ask yourself, what's the story here? What experience brought me to this insight? And what moment from my life can carry this message straight into someone's heart? Because when you tell the right story, you don't just teach. You move people. And that's what real communication is all about. Part 3. Have a conversation. What makes a great speaker feel instantly trustworthy? Why do some people sound like they're talking with us, while others sound like they're talking at us? The difference is tone. And more specifically, the ability to speak not as a performer, but as a human being having a conversation. Carmine Gallo reveals that the best TED speakers, and the most effective communicators in any setting, don't sound scripted. They sound natural, effortless. Like they're sitting across from you, sharing something important, not reading from a teleprompter or performing for approval. That tone doesn't happen by accident. It comes from preparation, yes, but also from intention. The intention to connect, not just to deliver. When you aim to have a conversation, everything shifts. Your language becomes clearer. Your cadence slows. You pause to let ideas land. You make eye contact, not to dominate, but to include. The goal is no longer to impress, it's to be understood. This doesn't mean abandoning structure. It means embodying presence. It means knowing your message so well that you don't need to cling to notes. You're not memorizing lines, you're communicating truth. You trust yourself. You trust the audience. And that trust creates space for authenticity to emerge. Great speakers make us feel like we're part of the moment. They don't hide behind jargon. They don't bury us in slides. They speak like they mean it, but they also speak like they care. And that subtle shift, from performing to sharing, is what gives a voice real power. Gallo points out that conversational tone isn't casual. It's focused. It's deliberate. It's real. When someone speaks with that kind of presence, we don't just listen, we feel safe. We drop our guard. We lean in. So the next time you speak, don't try to sound like a speaker. Sound like yourself, at your most clear, your most grounded, your most connected. Imagine you're speaking to one person, not a crowd. Speak like you're helping a friend, not pitching an idea. Because when it feels like a conversation, people listen. And when people truly listen, your message begins to matter. Part 4. Teach me something new. At the heart of every memorable talk is a spark. A shift. A moment when the listener hears something they didn't expect. Something that lights up curiosity, changes their perspective, or reveals a truth they hadn't yet put into words. Carmine Gallo calls this one of the pillars of powerful communication. The ability to teach something new. Not just new information, but a new way of seeing. People are naturally drawn to novelty. The brain rewards it. When we encounter something surprising, it wakes us up. It creates a burst of attention. But that newness has to be meaningful. It can't just be clever, it has to matter. The most effective TED speakers are teachers in the best sense of the word. They take what they've learned through experience, study, or reflection, and they distill it into something that others can immediately grasp and use. They don't overwhelm with complexity. They offer clarity, simplicity, insight that feels like a gift, not a lecture. But teaching something new doesn't mean reinventing the universe. Sometimes, the new is a forgotten truth reframed. A connection we hadn't seen before. A pattern suddenly made visible. It might be as simple as a metaphor that explains a concept in a way that finally clicks. Or a personal story that brings abstract data to life. The key is relevance. Great communicators don't just present ideas. They answer an unspoken question. Why does this matter to me right now? And they do it with humility. With purpose. With a desire to leave the audience changed, not just entertained. When you teach something new, you honor the listener's time. You respect their intelligence. You give them something they can walk away with. A tool, a lens, a shift in perspective. And that's what creates lasting impact. So as you prepare to speak, ask yourself, what's the insight here? What can I give that will truly add value? What have I learned that could lift someone else just a little bit higher? Because when you give people a new way to think, you give them a new way to live. And in that, your voice becomes more than a sound. It becomes a spark. Part 5. Deliver jaw-dropping moments. There's a moment in every unforgettable talk when time seems to pause. The audience leans in. Eyes widen. The room shifts. Something is revealed, demonstrated, or shared that nobody saw coming. And suddenly, the message lands not just in the mind, but in the gut. Carmine Gallo calls this the jaw-dropping moment. It's not about shock value for the sake of entertainment. It's about creating emotional punctuation. A moment so powerful, so unexpected, or so real that the audience won't just remember what was said, they'll remember how they felt when it happened. These moments often come in different forms. It might be a story that suddenly turns, revealing something deeply vulnerable. It could be a prop, a photo, or a live demo that makes an abstract idea instantly tangible. It could be a bold statement of truth, something that slices through noise with clarity and courage. But what makes these moments unforgettable isn't their size. It's their authenticity. The best speakers don't chase attention, they earn it. And the jaw-dropping moment isn't planned to manipulate, it's offered to serve the message. Crystallizes the idea. It gives the audience something to anchor their memory to. It makes the talk real. Great communicators understand that attention is a gift, but it's also fragile. In a world full of distraction, the speaker who knows how to land one unforgettable moment holds the key to influence. So how do you find that moment? You don't start with spectacle. You start with meaning. What's the core of your message? What story, truth, or insight could stop someone in their tracks? What have you lived through, seen, or proven that could reframe the way someone sees the world? And once you find it, don't bury it. Deliver it with presence, with honesty, with stillness, if needed. Let the moment breathe. Let it land. Because when you create that pause, when you offer that one idea they'll never forget, you're not just speaking anymore. You're imprinting. Part 6. Lighten the mood. Powerful communication doesn't always mean intensity. Sometimes, the most memorable speakers are the ones who make you feel something lighter, something human, relaxed, familiar. That's because humor, warmth, and playfulness open doors that logic alone can't. Carmine Gallo shows that the best TED speakers know how to balance gravity with levity. They don't try to be stand-up comedians, but they do understand the emotional rhythm of an audience. And they know that when things get too serious for too long, people begin to disconnect. Attention drifts. Walls go up. The brain looks for a breath of relief. That breath often comes through a smile, a small laugh, a moment of shared humanity. And it matters more than most people realize. Humor, used with care, creates instant connection. It signals confidence. It puts the audience at ease. It dissolves tension and says, "I'm one of you." But more than that, it makes a talk feel alive. It introduces contrast, which is what gives a message emotional range. The key, though, is authenticity. The humor doesn't need to be rehearsed or forced. In fact, The most effective light moments often come from vulnerability, spontaneity, or a well-timed observation. The kind of humor that says, "Yes, I've been there too." What matters is not being funny for applause, but being real in a way that disarms the room. Some of the most impactful moments in great talks happen just after laughter, when the speaker has earned the audience's trust, dropped their guard, and now delivers something meaningful that lands even deeper. That's the emotional setup that humor can provide. Not distraction. Permission. When people laugh, they open. When they open, they listen. And when they listen, real change can happen. So if your message is serious, consider this: where's the light? Where's the moment that reminds the audience you're not just a voice, you're a person? Where can you breathe softness into the structure without weakening it? Because a message that's too heavy breaks, but a message that breathes lives. Part 7. Stick to the 18-minute rule. There's something almost magical about the 18-minute mark. Long enough to say something meaningful. Short enough to hold attention. Just the right size for a message to be remembered, shared, and repeated. Carmine Gallo explores why TED Talks are famously capped at 18 minutes, and the reason goes beyond formatting. It's rooted in how the brain processes information, how fatigue sets in, and how focus is managed in a world of endless distraction. When a speaker goes beyond that window, something begins to shift. Attention fades. Energy dips. Even a brilliant message can lose its edge if it overstays its welcome. The power of the 18-minute rule is that it forces discipline. It demands clarity. It pushes the speaker to sharpen their message until only the essential remains. This doesn't mean all talks must be short, but it does mean that great communicators respect time. They know that less isn't just more, it's stronger. Because in a world where attention is scarce, the ability to be concise is a form of respect. It tells your audience, I value your time. I've prepared. I'm not here to wander. I'm here to deliver. The best speakers don't try to say everything. They choose one big idea. One clear through line, and they build around it with intention. Every story, every example, every moment is in service of that idea. And when the talk ends, the audience knows exactly what to carry with them. This kind of brevity requires confidence. It means trusting your message enough to let it stand without padding. It means cutting what's clever but unnecessary. It means asking yourself again and again, is this helping the core idea land? If not, it goes. The result is a talk that feels tight, focused, and powerful. Not because it was rushed, but because it was designed that way. And when something is designed with that kind of clarity, it becomes easier to remember. Easier to share. Easier to act on. Because ideas that last aren't always the longest. They're the ones that were delivered with purpose, and ended with precision. Part 8. Paint a mental picture. We don't think in bullet points. We think in images. We remember scenes, faces, sensations. The mind craves pictures, not just concepts. And that's why the best speakers don't just explain ideas, they show them. Carmine Gallo reveals that one of the most powerful tools in the communicator's arsenal is the ability to create mental imagery. The great speakers don't leave their audience processing abstract data. They use words to build a visual landscape, something the listener can see and feel in their mind's eye. When you describe an idea with vivid language, it sticks. It bypasses logic and goes straight to imagination. You're no longer just informing, you're transporting. Instead of saying, we faced a challenge, a great speaker might say, we were standing at the edge of a cliff, with no map, no light, and the wind against our backs. Suddenly, the audience isn't just hearing the situation, they're in it. This is what makes a message not only clearer, but memorable. Because when an idea is linked to a strong image, the brain attaches emotion to it. And emotion is the glue of memory. Visual storytelling doesn't require props or slides. It happens through detail, through metaphor, through the courage to slow down and let the image unfold. Whether you're describing a childhood moment, a scientific breakthrough, or a future vision, the key is to make the audience feel like they're watching it happen. And once that image is planted in their minds, they'll carry it long after the words fade. When you paint a mental picture, you turn your idea into a place the audience can return to. And the more clearly they can see it, the more deeply they believe it. Because the best ideas aren't explained. They're experienced. Part 9. Stay in your lane. Be authentic. The final secret of truly great communicators isn't about what they say, it's about who they are while they say it. Because in the end, the most persuasive person in the room isn't the smartest or the loudest, it's the most authentic. Carmine Gallo makes this clear. If your voice doesn't match your values, people feel it. If your energy is borrowed, if your message is forced, if you're performing someone else's identity, it won't land. Not really. Authenticity isn't a performance. It's alignment. It's when your tone, your stories, your posture, your pace, all reflect the same truth. The best speakers stay in their lane. They don't try to imitate what worked for someone else. They don't copy style. They don't dress up their message in borrowed charisma. They speak the way they think. They move the way they live. They present not just ideas, but themselves. This is what makes a message trustworthy. Not polish, not perfection, but realness. Audiences know the difference. They respond to honesty, to groundedness, to a sense that the person on stage isn't trying to sell something, they're trying to share something. They're not standing above the room. They're standing with it. Authenticity doesn't mean being unfiltered. It means being true. It means knowing your voice and letting that voice carry your message, without apology. Whether you're energetic or soft-spoken, analytical or emotional, charismatic or calm, your job is not to fit a mold. Your job is to own your truth and deliver it with clarity. Because when you speak from who you are, you don't need to perform. You just need to show up fully. And that, more than any technique, is what people remember. Conclusion. Speak to move. Not to impress. The most powerful speakers in the world aren't trying to look impressive. They're trying to make something happen. They speak not to be admired, but to be felt. To be remembered. To create a shift in the mind or heart of the listener that lasts beyond the moment. Talk Like TED isn't about performing. It's about unlocking what already lives inside you. Your ideas, your voice, your truth, and learning how to communicate it with clarity, emotion, and presence. These 9 principles aren't tricks. They're tools. And when used with intention, they change everything. Because when you speak with passion, when you tell stories that connect, when you teach something meaningful and deliver it with authenticity, you don't just inform, you inspire. And that's what the elite communicators, the 1%, understand better than anyone else. The goal isn't just to be heard. It's to be believed. It's to be trusted. It's to move people toward something bigger than words. So the next time you stand up to speak, whether it's to 1 person or 1,000, remember this: your voice is a vehicle. And your message, if delivered with purpose, can be the very thing that opens a door in someone else's mind. Let me know in the comments what insight from this video shifted your perspective. And if you're serious about elevating your communication, I highly recommend reading the full book Talk Like TED by Carmine Gallo. The link is in the description. If this is your first time here, welcome to Compact Wisdom. Subscribe for more timeless ideas distilled into powerful, practical insights. And share this with someone who's ready to speak like they belong in any room. Thank you for watching. And remember, don't speak to impress. Speak to move.